All right, everyone. Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of the Deer Gear podcast. Last time we sat down, we had Dorge and Dave Murray with me, and we're back again. The last conversation we had was one of my favorite podcasts that I have done, and the three of us have done. So we figured we might as well build off of that. And it's March 21st as we record this. March Madness is starting today, and seems like the weather is kind of mad. It's not feeling like spring. I think what was it? Yesterday was the first day of spring, and it's snowing and 20 degrees.
Yep, it's really cold here too in Illinois.
What about New Jersey, Dave? Is it treating you all right?
Last week it was little warm out, but then chilled up again. I will say coming from Western PA over the weekend, there was about a 15, 20 degree difference in temperature with it being colder out that way. So we're not feeling it, I guess, like you guys are over there.
Yeah, it's frigid, and I'm trying to get in the mood to hunt turkeys, and the weather's not really helping me. So I was initially wanting to talk a little bit about like building an arrow setup for hunting turkeys because I know it's way different than if you were to go hunt a deer. But because I'm not in the turkey mood yet, we're gonna keep pushing forward with the compound bow build extremes. And today we're going to focus on the short end of the extreme. The people like myself, the short drawed folks, the folks that were not blessed with long arms. You guys okay with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. To be frank, your short draw is only partially the problem. How about a 42 to 45 pound pool with a 26-inch draw and want to hunt?
Yeah, those people are going to be very limited. So I guess let me start this off by asking what is the number that we're considering a short drawed hole? Is it 28? Is it 26? Is it somewhere in between there? What's the cutoff mark to be considered short?
24 to 26 inch
so
draw.
I'm not short. All right.
No, you are. Anybody over 27 is considered normal.
Okay.
27 to 30 is normal. Anything from 29 and a half to above is considered long. Actually, anything over 30 can be officially considered long because the bows are designed up to 30. You're not going to easily get a 31-inch draw out of most of the bow unless they are designed for it.
Well, Dorge, you just took away my biggest excuse, so thank you for
that. Excuse for what? We're not being perfect?
Not having enough speed, not having the.
Do you know when I first started? You know when I first started archery, I should have Oneida X80, and the gentleman set me up for 27.5-inch draw. Should I say more?
Well, you're probably like a 29.5, aren't you?
29.75. Because he did not know any better. It's the release that killed me. But that's a different story for today.
Yeah. So what does So let's focus first on the length. What does a short drawed person need to put most of its focus in?
Well, actually, the bow design when they came design on this specific bow. I mean, very good. Just like the old Hoyt cam and a half system. It was great at 29-inch draw. It's okay at 27. The moment you buy a 26, I mean, that bow is technically unshootable.
Why is that?
I mean, just for that Hoyt design, for the cam and half Hoyt design, for that, it's just too much of an adjustment. I mean, some bows are better, but we're talking back then, the TurboTac. That's one of the Hoyt bow that is just not good because they use the B cam. That is just not great for 26-inch draw people. I mean, some bows are better than others, like the old Matthew MQ32. That's a great short draw bow. So, in other words, short draw is not really a total handicap if somebody want to call it. You just need to find the right bow that will you feel great and have good power at that draw length.
So before we go further, what characteristics of a bow are you looking for a good short drawed bow? Because I mean, if I look at a bow, I'm like, oh, that bow is small, so it must be good for short draw. Like what makes a bow good for a short draw line?
In the old days, like the PSC's X-Force tree stand, that's a great short draw bow, tree stand bow. But see, back then, the design of the limbs is a little bit different and how they can behave is a bit different. See, at the end of the day, when you do a short draw, you are technically, from a normal bow, say a 30-inch draw, you are taking away at least a 10% plus of the entire draw cycle and launch cycle. Because if you look at a 30-inch bow, now you're doing a 26. If the cam design, you just scale it, you're literally losing over 12% of the entire draw power stroke and draw length.
Sure. So
I mean, if you think of a barrel, you just cut about 11% of a barrel off the gun.
Yeah, your accuracy is going to suffer. So
well, it's not really. It depends on how the whole design is. Because see, we have short barrels and we're long barrel for different purposes. I mean, can somebody shoot a long barrel compare short barrel accurately? Answer is yes. The design has to match. That's
right.
pretty much what you need to be.
Would you say for someone in that boat, it would be better to shoot a bow that is doesn't have an adjustable module, but it's cam specific, like a Matthews or like the new Primes?
It's always cam specific is always better because you can do some finer adjustment that a cam cannot. I mean, that's the reason when like the Hoy, they can do an adjustment of about close to 2 3/4 inch effectively. But then when you low draw to the lower part of the mud, it's not ideal. The whole idea is optimization on the machining. So if you find some bow that is decent to shoot, you must shoot the bow exactly at the drawing you do. Then you can go from there and shoot multiple. Because just like I vividly remember the incident. I bought the first laser tag. I was loving it. I was telling everybody how good it is. Then I showed it to my good buddy Paul, which has a 26.5-inch draw, and they both sucked.
Yeah.
So it's the same bow, just because different drawing, different mark, it just don't behave well. Then he ended up with a Bowtech, and he loved it. And then I have to say that back then the Bowtech smart was, but the Bowtech cams are better for some of the people. That's the reason, it's not one company, one bow. It's each bow. You have to shoot it with the accessory you have to make sure you work. And in most cases, the Matthew single cam bow, the older ones with the drawing specific, I would say they are a lot more tuned for that specific draw length than others.
Sure.
I mean, technically, any bow that if you come with a whole cam, you can pretty much know they are going to be a little bit better.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, another good example is the PSC full throttle. That is cam specific again. There's no mark, but that's where you get the speed, especially with short draw guy. The more aggressive cam depends on the ability to pull and how aggressive the cam is. You may need it.
Yeah.
Because you are hindered by the shorter draw length.
Yeah, do you know off the top of your head what the stat is for like every inch you increase your draw length, what the feet per second gain is compared to like if you were to go up 5 pounds in weight?
I don't remember. I used to know those numbers by heart, but after I shoot crossbow for so long, I don't remember those numbers. Sorry.
Generally, I think if I remember right, it's something. It depends on the cam efficiency, and I think the numbers were, and this is based on what I gather from the PSE guy that I went and I spoke to, Steve Van Zyl, that I think he told me it was something around 8 to 10 feet per second per inch as a general rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Not that it has to be that or that's a definitive number, but that's what you lose or gain in an inch of draw length, roughly.
Yeah, and there was something like it would take like 5 pounds or 8 pounds of draw weight to gain as much as you could gain from 1 inch of draw length. Like you can increase your speed way easier with an inch of draw versus the poundage of the pool.
It's not just that. The poundage of pool is giving you the final initial launch of the chronograph. But the longer draw length, you actually have a lot more power onto the arrow because your power stroke is longer.
Yeah.
Power strokes that's the reason, for the short brace height, for the short brace height, short draw is really one of the best things you can do. Because the whatever brace height you have is minus actually from your draw length, the power stroke. For example, you got a 30-inch draw, you got to say a 9-inch brace height, you actually only got a 21 power stroke.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Because that part is not when you're in the power.
Sure.
That's the reason when you run power, just like the eccentric SD6, well, the brace height is 6-inch, so the 30-inch you actually got a 24-inch power stroke.
Yeah, and in my mind, I feel like this particular category of archers is that has a lot more to think about than the long draw guy. I know they both have their extremes, but the ability to hunt effectively and ethically and morally or whatever with a short draw length, you have a lot more to think about.
Well, actually, the reverse, and I would say that the reverse conceptual is wrong, because see, the whole idea is that power is simply a ratio to your projectile. I mean, if you put say 70-pound, 350 grain arrow, technically you can do that. If you do a 60-pound, then what is your arrow weight to get the same identical performance? That's pretty much what you're thinking about.
Sure.
So yes, when you go to a short draw and low power stroke, your total energy input is going to be significantly lower. I do mean significantly. But then at the end of the day, if the arrow is built correctly, you don't need that much force.
Sure. So
I vividly remember, just like I always pull that out, the gentleman with the 26-inch draw with a 43 to 45-pound power stroke shot through an elk at 68 yards with a 337 grain arrow. What's the magic? The magic is, I would also like go to the last page of today's show. The magic is that your arrow has to be as strict as possible. Your broadhead has to be as sharp as possible, and the arrow flight has to be perfect. Then you go through, because it's just like threading a needle.
Yeah. I remember having that conversation with Tyler Terry, his wife. He was talking about like the trend towards heavy arrows out west. And he's like, everyone thinks you need to have a 600 grain arrow to shoot through an elk. Well, my wife's doing it with 45 pounds and 25 inches. So and a 300 some grain arrow. Dave, do you deal with a lot of short draw length vertical bow guys?
Yep, I have those guys come in. One of the, I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and when you get a guy in there, despite if the bow's good or bad to somebody else, like Dorge names a bow that's, I would agree with, it would be, bad as a short draw length bow, but you end up with a guy that for whatever reason loves that bow. He shoots dimes at 100 yards, and that's his go-to source. And the only thing that I can do for him at that point, because I can't go changing everybody's mind on a bow, is that it comes down to the arrow build and where I can improve that, or the components on the bow, like a titanium kit. So I'll get a guy once in a while that'll shoot like a Matthews Mission, and he'll bring it into me, and he'll talk about maybe getting some arrows, but they'll always steer towards getting that latest and greatest Matthews bow. Bows are getting more expensive. They got a bow that they already will tell me they shoot good with it. It's a nice bow. And I tell them, listen, I said, why don't you let me throw a titanium kit in it, put a set of strings on it, and do an arrow build, and you take it from there. So I did that on a few of them, and they were ecstatic. They couldn't eat. I mean, the one guy shot 65 pounds. He was a 26-inch draw, and I boosted up his ping brackets anywhere from 5 to 10 yards, bumped up in increments on it. And he was originally he was shooting a 20-yard pin, and now his 20-yard was pushing 30 yards, which doesn't surprise me. But when you're on the buying end and you first see that result, that's impressive, because you eliminated ping gap and you essentially take guesswork out of hunting. So, I also try and tell them not to try and chop the heck out of the arrow, because some of the advantage to a shooter that's, I think, wrong is they want to see how short they can make an arrow to gain speed at it. But a lot of the times you lose forgiveness with the arrow, trying to chop the heck out of it. They'll chop the heck out of it that it's just on the end of the insert, and there's problems you go through from there with it. At the other aspect of it, you're already at a short draw length, and you're chopping the arrow down, and not only is there an issue with forgiveness and flight of the arrow, but it's my opinion that a longer arrow will be easier to get that dynamic bend going in action, so you have more consistency and forgiveness on launch, which I think is a really major part of the forgiveness, with the exception of the arrow going down range in flight, is we want that predictability. So I try and keep them still at a 28-inch arrow, despite if they're shooting a 26 or 25-inch draw length. That's how I try and enter the footsteps, into the short draw world.
Sure. So let's dive into some of that magic, Dorge, where you said that the magic is some of the way that you build the arrow.
Not just the arrow. So Dave put a really good point. You know why the titanium kit is critical for this? I'll just sort of put it out there so people understand what the titanium kit do. When you shoot a 70-pound, 30-inch bow with titanium, you get what you call it the minimum effect. If you shoot an over 70-pound bow with a titanium kit, the effect is very, very minimal, even less. When you start shooting lower poundage, the titanium effect becomes much, much, much bigger. Do you know why?
I don't.
Because of the tightness of the bow. Think about it. A 70-pound, 30-inch draw, the design that everything is tied down. There's no gap nowhere. The whole thing is tight. It's like a good suspension. Everything is locked down. Now, as you decrease the poundage, decrease that's the reason when you should say, if you really want to shoot a 45-pound bow, you should find a limb that will bottoms out at 45 pounds to start with.
Yeah.
Or then you tighten everything down until you minimize the high frequency vibration, or even the secondary on the tertiary vibration. But the resonance is where the titanium helped. Because when the bow launched, the whole bow shakes so badly. It's a multi-level shake. You got a basic fundamental frequency, you got the secondary vibration, you got a third vibration, and you got a resonance. And this is where titanium kit really helped. You really cannot afford to lose any at that moment.
No, you can't.
Because you don't have much to start with. So every single detail become very precious. Now imagine you have the bow that is going to lose, say, right on the get-go 5%. Well, you don't have any percentage to lose. You lose 5 here, 5 there. And not to mention, the bow shakes very violently on a thin one because the bow is not tight, just like a loose suspension. And you try to go off-road, you're not going to have a suspension towel very long, which makes the titanium kit one of the best things you can do if you do short draw. I mean, yes, of course, the string bump, because those two things come in hand. Because everything in your hand is so short. Remember, all the numbers are getting closer and closer and closer.
Yeah.
Now, on the arrow side, this is the time when people and that you say, you don't buy arrow from me anymore. You buy special shaft by special people who make arrow that's light enough.
Like
the Carbon-Tech Cheetah, your Victory HVV, the Victory HVs, your Carbon Express Blue Streak. Those are the things that you don't really. I mean, your durability goes down the drain, but you don't really have a choice at that time.
What kind of GPI are we looking for there?
6.3, 6.5.
It's pretty light.
But then you look at it's pretty light because you want your arrow with a broadhead around 300 grain, if not lighter.
So that's something that, like, I kind of expected that to be the train of thought that you guys would have, but it seems like a lot of people kind of go the opposite way when they start talking. Well, I'm a short draw length, so I need more momentum, so I need a heavier arrow.
Yeah, but you end up with no speed. Remember, speed is needed. Your slug force is needed, but you also need penetration.
Right.
There's a happy medium too to this. There's I don't want to in the middle range, because sometimes when people say heavy, they're thinking 500 or 600 grain, and light at the other end they're thinking like 320. I put several shooters. One actually I just talked to in right in that 420 grain bracket. Then I was building Black Eagle Outlaws, which I think are about 9 grains an inch, about almost the same weight as Dorge's stuff. And for typical hunting, I would say in this area where you're under 40 yards or something. Not that it can't go past that. I think that was fine. The Carbon-Tech is a great arrow. I built on a lot of cheetahs in the past. Real fast shooting arrow, real nice. Some of the downsides to that from a builder's perspective is I know it's classified as a standard shaft, but there's nothing standard about standard shafts. It's advertised as a 243 diameter shaft, but on the mic you can get like 242-ish out of it, and that's already really, really tight for knocks, like the S knock and stuff, which can fit it, but you're gonna chew up the knocks, more on the barrel part, versus you know putting them in like a 246 shaft, like what Dorge would make, or I think some of the gold tips are 246s, where it just fits in there like a glove, real nice and neat. And at the other end of the deal, putting concept systems in that shaft can be a little bit of a struggle down that tight. I've had to sand down many concept tubes just to try and fit in there. That tolerance goes a little bit one way or the other, and you've got like triple the work. I mean,
Yeah.
your hands at the end of the dozen just they're tired of grabbing, trying to sand that like a half a thousandths off of a 6-inch tube.
Yeah, that's a
So,
lot. That's getting
but
real specific.
right,
Correct.
but did they shoot nice after that build? It took me 3 hours longer. Absolutely, it was that was probably one of the fastest hours I've put through. Not that I like to do pornograph stuff, but from the start of that 3 foot point blank range on a chrono, I think I was 310, and at 50 yards, it was still shooting 281 feet per second, which you're talking about a 9.5% decrease in speed, but penetration was about the same.
Yeah.
So
See, hmm
it was that was it was a real efficient arrow. Then when we added the 2.0 system to it, that's what I first tested it out on. It was just even more like, wow.
Yeah. One thing I want to throw in here too for people that are listening to this, weight is relative, right? So if you are a 29-inch draw guy shooting a 440 grain arrow, or a 25-inch draw guy shooting a 440 grain arrow, that weight means different things to those people. So
hmm
I shoot a 440 grain arrow, which in my eyes is like one of those middle of the road deals. But for a guy that's shooting 24-inch arrows, that's pretty heavy.
Not just
Yeah.
that. Remember that, like the last example I going to use, when you only have 45-pound pool compared to a 70-pound pool, right in the get-go, you are pulling how many pounds less? It's like 30% less.
Yeah.
And then you're also dealing with power stroke. That's 26-inch. That's another 10 to 12% less. So when you compound the two, you're actually shooting 50% less power overall compared to a 70-pound 30-inch draw guy.
Yep.
So assuming that if you look at a 440 grain arrow as ideal, theoretically you should look at a 220 grain arrow complete.
Yeah,
but you
50%
couldn't.
less. Yeah, right.
Exactly. See, that's where a lot of times comes into the point that if you really put everything back in paper and look at the numbers, you say, wait a minute, 330 grain is not very heavy. But the problem is that you're limited to what's available.
Yep.
At the end of the day, a knock is about from 7 to 11 grain. And an insert is going to be around about 30 to 15 grain. And then when you look at GPIs, yes, the GPIs of a shaft. I mean, that's the reason when you should say a 45-pound pull, you should be really looking at a 4, 5, 600 spine arrow. But then again, anything under 400 spine, you are not going to find too many.
You're right. Right.
And that's another set of problems. So when you start thinking about those, it's really, really, really going to sort of wreck your brain. I mean, like I remember Tony Warden's wife, he was shooting a full throttle at barely 50 pounds. Her arrow was not even 300 grain, and his sipping leg was nothing.
Yeah. The what does Arrow Concept do for someone in this short draw category? Is it more beneficial, less, or the same?
Actually, it's a lot more beneficial. So arrow concept is always good for both extremes because it changes it. I mean, when you're dealing with 26 arrow, you only have a single parabolic action compared to a 30 inch, which have 2 or up to 3, and a 30 above, you have for sure more than 3 parabolic action in the shaft when you launch it.
Which is what we were talking about last week with like how it's not shaped like a fish; it's more like a snake at this point.
Correct, but the short draw is always a fish.
Okay.
Now the arrow concept will change the entire shape from absolutely a freaking halibut all the way to a mackerel on the case of an arrow concept 2.0. But then you're also adding weight.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason you need to build something with really, really, really lightweight to start with. And at this time, I remember the one that Jeremy built for the gentleman is based on a 246. Okay. And then he only put 3 inch on the back and 5 inch in the front. I mean, I would have put 6 inch in the front and go with more like a 3 inch on the back, but he tried to hit the target weight with a reasonable speed because the gentleman is going to shoot 60 to 70, he's up to 70 yards. That's the reason when he shot the elk at 68, that's really pushing it.
Oh, yeah.
But when he sipped through that elk, what more do you want?
Right. So another thing that you really have to go into consideration for the short draw fella or woman is your broadhead choice, right? So
Yes.
something that I personally feel is if you are in that short draw 27 and under and you're shooting 65 pounds and under, stay away from mechanical broadheads.
I can't agree more. Because at the same time you technically have to go with cut and contact or broadhead. I mean, see, a lot of people do not recognize in the target world, especially the NFAA, what is if you look at the thing besides the pro, what are the average person who are shooting NFAA? Is your 23 to 27 inch draw, your 40 to 50 pound pull. That whole group is in that range.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got kids that is 10 to 15, 12 years old walking around with a big ginormous bow, and the arrow don't look like toothpicks. Yeah, I just come back from that. That's the reason I started reminding myself that. I say, wait a minute, all this customer needed. And yes, they will only shoot 166 because you think about it, as everything starts shrinking. For them, they are not shooting broadheads, they're shooting few points. Not even few, they're gluing points. Those group of people they are very specific. You're talking about some of the parents literally drop. I mean, look at that. Holy cow, I got so many brand new titles, PSC Supra on kids' days, barely 12 or 13 years old. That bow is as big as them. I mean, we were talking to New Matthew, the 38-inch title, the PSC Supra, you know how big they are. The Supra
37 inches, yeah.
Right, and how tall are they?
Yeah. Did you
and what's
did you see Mason Springer down there?
I think so. He didn't come and visit, but I think he's there too.
He plays second.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's that is my archery coach. He's a 13-year-old young man, and he is 14. Forget his age exactly, but he's the one coaching me up. But he is a shooter, and he shoots a PSC Supra. That's a 37-inch axle bow.
Exactly. And how long is his draw length?
I think he's at like 27, maybe.
Right. So you can imagine, but his arrow is zipping. But then another thing is that I think an arrow about 220 feet per second, that's where I really think need to get the effectiveness to hunting. And then just like Dave said, when you start putting a full arrow concept build on that, that's where the weight goes up. But the efficiency and how well the arrow launches and recover is the key. Because you see a lot more in the low draws because everything that go wrong shows up, which is exactly the opposite effect. Or actually, no, exactly the same effect, but with the opposite condition when you shoot an ultra high-end crossbow. Because the speed is what makes everything show up. This one is if you don't have it, you don't got it.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot you can do to get it.
Yeah, it's whole lot left for you to mine it.
Right.
If you really want to hunt, that's something that will really sort of wreck your brain to get it because every single minor thing to the point of unethical. Because see, when you really drop down to below 30 pound impact force, unless you've got a really good broadhead and the broadhead is going really straight, it's not going to kill.
Yeah. One thing I do want to note, there's two things I want to note. I want to ask a question on, so Dave, you said you still like to keep people in that 28-inch arrow range, regardless if they're shooting a 25-inch draw or 24-inch draw, whatever. That's kind of your starting point is 28 inches. Dorge, would you take that same approach?
Well, it depends on the customer and how well they handle the arrow. A shorter arrow requires a little bit more precision, control. I learned that the hard way with target people because I usually put them in longer ones. This is the reason, as of 2024, I'm going to have 500, 600, and 700 spine, 166.
Wow.
Those are for the target crowd because that crowd is getting bigger than, I mean, a lot of actually father and mother and grandfather come to me and say, hey, Dorge, we love what you did for us. We need you to make you X arrow for our grandkid, son, daughter, who is now in NFFA to do well. The arrow build is just not good enough. I mean, that's actually the easy one. When you go into field archery, now that's a whole different ballgame. You're talking 50 meters. That's in arrows, arrow wing 3, with the 75 ring head, that kind of deal. I mean, you're talking people putting $600 for a dozen of field points, okay?
Yeah.
You did hear me right. $600 for a dozen of field points.
Yeah, that's bananas.
Yes.
Man.
And then dropping 1,100 bucks on a dozen of arrows. Yes, that's what field archery is.
Yeah, I could go hunt 4 states for that much. So, the other well, I want to continue on that, Dave. I'm going to ask you this. So, this is just maybe I'm playing devil's advocate or whatever, but I'm just curious. So, on a 25-inch draw person shooting a 28-inch arrow, I know that most of your builds you're putting arrow concept in, but isn't that still pushing them further away from the node to get the forgiveness?
Yeah, it's one of them things where it's a give and take. Do you want the dynamic bend to react a little bit more? Because don't forget the concept system helps broaden the node. Most people don't even pay any attention or even know about the node unless they listen to a Firenock dealer, us on the podcast, etc. It's kind of like new territory. If I walked into a chat forum right now and start talking about node, nobody would know what the heck I was talking about.
Right.
So it's one of them things that's a give and take when you're kind of on them starting points, with a person that, just say he's a 26-inch draw, or the node might be pushed a little further, but part of the aid to that concept system, like I said again, is it helps broaden the node to where it's not as dramatically affected as if it didn't have the concept system.
Right.
I mean, in an ideal world, would we like for that to be adjusted right on there and the arrow cut down shorter, but then we lose a little bit more of that bend, especially if it's light poundage. If a person's shooting 45 pounds and they got a short, stubby 24-inch arrow, I mean, then they got to, the spine becomes more critical in that aspect to where, let's just say we shoot a 600 spine. When you're shooting 600 spine in hunting conditions and you try and practice with that every day, that becomes paper thin. And odds are the person out there is going to group shoot the arrows. They're going to destroy the arrows. I'm going to go through them faster. You end up with that whole mess. So me personally, I'd rather just ixnay a little bit on the node because it's not driving the arrow so close to the rest that you end up with that problem where you got the arrow just kind of bouncing up and off the rest. You still got the weight out front and you take that approach. So generally when I run into the shooters that are around here in this area, they're typically shooting under 30 yards, with the exception of some of them were kids, younger adults who were just starting to enter into shooting. I'd rather put him in the slightly longer arrow. And I use the same example in crossbow world when people ask me, well, do I go to a 20-inch arrow or is a 22-inch better? Well, from a build perspective, if both of the arrows can shoot good at 100 yards, the 22-inch arrow will be a little bit more forgiving in launch because it's longer, same spine but longer, compressed under the same load, is going to react easier, a little bit more predictable. How noticeable is it? You'd have to shoot it yourself and find out. If I were to push the envelope more than 100 yards in crossbow world, it's definitely going to be more forgivable downrange because you got to figure that the longer arrow is going to be more stable in flight downrange than the shorter arrow general is going to become more finicky. So regardless of, if you're shooting an arrow vein, you got minimal crosswind signature. If you're shooting a blazer vein that has a lot of crosswind signature, the bottom line is you still got crosswind signature to contend with. So what happens is when you start playing all that into the factor, especially like in crossbow where some of these guys are shooting, 70, 80, 90, 100 yards a game, or if they're shooting vertical bow out west, 60, 70 yards at elk. You got to put all that into the factor because it's not only from an accuracy standpoint that you can lose potential accuracy down to the target, but because your arrow is more finicky, you lose energy. So if we can achieve a little bit more or retain a little bit more of the energy standpoint downrange with a longer arrow and more predictability, which on launch, which makes it more forgivable to begin. That inherently is the in my opinion, the driving force of the accuracy right there from the initial shot perspective. I think that's a better road to take.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like number one, most folks, and I say most, and if this is not you, don't take offense to it, but most folks aren't good enough to tell the difference between the 2 inches that you said. Like, how noticeable is it? But the benefits are there. It's almost like if you were to go kayaking, steering a really short kayak is a lot harder than steering a big canoe. They're just it's less reactive. So I agree with that approach. I just wanted to kind of hear your perspective on that. Dorge, you said there are, I think you said 3 or 4 things that a short draw person needs to have. And one of those things you said was the arrow has to be straight. I thought the straightness of the arrow was irrelevant.
The strictness in flight.
Oh.
That's reason Arrow Concept 2.0 is so much better. Because see, the angle of attack of the arrow, in other words, just like holding a blade, the blade angle of input of original first contact is as critical as it gets. It's actually more critical. Because you only got so much to work with. A 15 degree, you can lose up to 30% energy right on the get-go. The ratio of the factor change is so significant with force. That's the reason the arrow has to be straight in flight and straight in contact and straight in penetration.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that because a lot of people, and, especially when you get into mechanical broadheads with, quartering shots, will sometimes get a deflection. And the way I relate it to the customers are that, the angle of attack is important. You want to hit it as 90 degrees as you can. That if, for instance, most of us have put a nail in a 2x4 and tried hitting it. We're a little bit sideways and hit our thumb instead and needed a Band-Aid. The nail never went in and it shot off in direction. It's not because we didn't swing as hard. It's because the angle of the nail changed and it just didn't have that penetration. And we had a point sitting right on the wood. Now we're launching something at 200, 300, 400 feet per second. And it's not even in contact with an animal that likely might even be moving and on an angle. So there's a lot more variable into that. So the straightness, I don't think in terms of straightness of the arrow, it would be just in regards to that trajectory and flight. But not only that, but it comes into the stability of the shaft. We want less microflex into the arrow to dampen that point so it's not acting like that fish, because every time that arrow flexes, the point goes a different direction, right? So if we can minimize that flex in the shaft, we dampen the point and your angle of attack is ultimately better.
Sure. Okay. So we have, I don't know, about 15 minutes left here. So we're going to play a couple different scenarios. And I'm sure there's people listening to this that we caught their attention with, this is me, right? I'm this archer and I want a better arrow build. So I come to you, I'm a 25.5-inch arrow draw length guy. I'm shooting 60 pounds and I want to hunt elk. How can you help me?
Well, if I build the arrow, see, you say something that is dramatically better because you have the 60 pound. Even you shoot a 25.5-inch arrow, it's not too bad. In this point, you still need the arrow to flex. So I would say based on that, I would look at a 400 grain arrow. Most probably, I would start with for this specific build, I would most probably go with, actually, I can afford to go with the Arrow V400 and then do 16 in the front. I don't not even in the back because you got enough power. You don't need the Arrow Concept 2.0 to build. and a 400 spine shaft is light enough. And with that, I would just actually put on a 75 grain broadhead. That is a cut on contact, and maybe a two blade if you have time to tune.
Like
If
the
you don't have time
dagger or
to,
something?
the dagger, or if you don't have time to tune, I will go with the tooth of the arrow. They make one, and also the annihilator. That's a good one. That's a good one at 75 grain. That's good, really. To be frank with you, if I have a choice, I would definitely get the. No, they don't make it in 75. You may be able to get away with the, let's say, Ramcat SPG. Actually, even the Ramcat is going to be fantastic. You're going to get fantastic bleed out of it. It's no doubt. With that lower poundage, long flight, nothing bleeds like a Ramcat. I don't think anybody can top that.
Dave, anything differ for you?
I would go with a 1.6 build as far as the air weave or the sport weave options. Both are really good shafts. I don't, and I tell people this all the time that I don't, I steer them towards my lesser priced option because I know how good of a build it is. Not that the other one isn't better, but it's if the air weave being first best, the other one's second best out there on the market, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I would do a 1.0 concept build, meat and potatoes build on it, throw them on AV2 vanes because a lot of people like to, mess with their own broadheads. If they ask for a broadhead recommendation, something like elk, I would steer towards the if they're into the fixed two blade area because some of the people like to go that iron will direction or whatever. I would steer them towards like the Mim dagger, like the 100 grain or the 125. Or like Dorge said, that Ramcat has been around forever. There's a lot of good feedback on it. I've used the head. Whatever that thing hits, cuts. So that's probably the direction I would go into outside of if a state allowed the hybrid mechanicals per se, then I would steer towards like a swing blade.
Okay.
And you got the options there for like the 75, the 125 grain head, and they can put the practice collar ring on there and shoot it. Not that you need it because the thing is literally modeled after the arrow point.
Yeah. So let me change that scenario and make it more extreme and say that I'm only shooting 45 pounds. What changes?
Yep. Then you only have one choice. First of all, you go with the lighter shaft, the Carbon Cheetah, the 40-70 Carbon Cheetah. Mm-hmm. No, actually the 30-60 Carbon Cheetah, which is the 400 spine, or you go with the Victory HV. That is going to be a really good shaft because that shaft is easy to build. It's just like the Gold Tip, but except it's ultra high modular. I think the 400 spine is 5.7 grain per inch, if I remember correctly. So
yes, I think it's under 6.
Yeah, that's the reason that build is going to be fantastic. I mean, I think that's what Jeremy ended up to either Cheetah, the Cheetah 400. That's what he built with that gentleman. And that arrow is very fragile. But after you kill the elk as your bucket list, what more do you want?
Yeah. I mean, you that arrow fulfilled the goal for sure. In that scenario, do you move towards Aero Concept 2.0?
I would try to, but I still have a weight constraint. The 2.0 is going to be one of the best things you can do. Yes, it's going to cost more money, but you're pushing the extreme. So every single thing that you can help to minimize it, to gain your momentum and slug force and straightness, you want it because you don't have much to work with.
Right.
Dave? I mean, if it's that easy, everybody would have done it.
Yeah. Dave, anything differ from you in that perspective? 25 inches, 45 pounds?
The only thing I would say to the shooters out there, besides the arrow builds, and generally I would take this the same approach, would be the trying to judge. With a lot of the new bows have these 80, 90% let-offs. If you can adjust that down some on your bow, even if it means sacrificing a few pounds, I think the transitioning through the draw cycle on something that short as like a little spring-loaded rubber band is what I'm going to hypothetically use as an example. Is going to be better for the arrow and better downrange on your shot, despite the mentality of I need more pounds to get more energy kind of deal. When your draw force curve can be altered to be smoother, a better transition for the arrow outside of coming out of the hole, going into the power band of the draw force curve that would be more detrimental to the arrow, to your shot.
Dave raised a good point. If I really have that 45-pound pull and a 26-inch draw, I technically want to go all the way to 65, not 55% at all, because I need that, especially if you want to shoot that 60, 70 yard. Your low let off becomes so critical.
Yeah, I think anyone shooting any poundage should consider dropping their let off percentage to whatever you're physically capable of doing. It is, in my opinion, like the easiest change that you can make, and it is the most impactful.
Remember your 85 to 80? What difference does it make?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was. I'm way more than 5% better now than when I changed. And my triax, I changed from 85 to 75, and it makes a big difference.
It does.
And people don't. The people just don't understand that. I always say that. Don't take our word as gospel, which is they are not. Do it yourself and actually see the result yourself. It's so obvious. You ask yourself what just happened, because a lot of times they never compare. I always told people in archery is one of the easiest things to do a proof to yourself. But then the way you use your bow, the way you shoot is unique because you are a unique person. You need to see how that combination fits you. And people keep on forgetting, archery is very, very individual. It's just like, I mean, my conversation with Paul, because I shoot at 29 3/4, he shoot at 26 or 27. I told him this is the best bow ever made. For him, it's like junk. He only had it for 3 weeks. He sold it.
Yeah. It's like, what the hell are you talking about, Dorge?
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, I feel so bad because I even get the bow for him, set it up, and he shoot it and say, Dorge, this is bad. I should go back to my MQ-32. He ended up getting a bow tag.
One last thing that I want to kind of touch on here. It's not really related to anything that we were just talking about, but did you guys see the news that Athens Archery closed the doors?
No.
Athens, the bow company?
Yeah, Athens Archery was forced to close their doors. They are in a legal battle that they just said they can't fight. There was another bow manufacturer that came after them for a patent infringement on their cam design, and Athens said that they just don't have the resources to fight a fair battle, so they were forced to shut the doors.
No wonder, because I was on the NFAA, did not see Athens. They were next to me on the last year in NFAA Cincinnati Indoor Championship. I was wondering what happened.
Yeah. So, what's your initial reaction to that?
In today's patent law, I mean, I haven't seen the patent. I don't know what the thing is. There's quite a lot of superfluous lawsuit out there. That means if you don't have a good lawyer and understand law and somebody sue you, you can be out of existence in no time.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, but that is how.
That's a shame, though, because there's a lot of good patents that expired out there. You know, I think that they can kind of adapt on and use. You know, you feel bad for a company because Athens was actually my first bow company that I got a dealership in when I started back when who was it? Jason owned it, and then he sold it to. I forget who owns it now. I met the guy though. Nice guy.
He's in New York. As a husband and wife team.
Yeah, I mean, nice people. You hate to see something like that. I mean, in the midst of over the past few years, there's been a lot of archery shops that have shut the doors down too. So it's hard. You see like a change of pattern, change of how sales going. A lot of stuff is on the internet now. Yeah, that's a shame when you see something like that and a company like that, because you have an understanding that a lot of manufacturers like Dorge, I know, who I is a friend outside of a manufacturer, he pours his heart and soul into his business, and if something said that, I would imagine, I'm inclined to think that would crush Dorge if he ever had to not make archery equipment for customers, because that's what he loves to do. So I can picture a lot of the manufacturers in that same boat, and it's just an unfortunate situation that something like that has to happen.
Yeah, I think my initial reaction is the same. It's a shame. It's Athens owned a lot of patents that they still hold for other manufacturers, and they're kind of I don't know if they were a forefather of the industry or whatnot, but they were like one of the
They're not.
one of the
They.
staples, though. They were like one of
Mhm.
the companies that, like, when you see Athens Archery, you immediately know, like, oh, that's a good product. So it was a shame. I kind of initial reaction was it's sad that whatever the other bow manufacturer was, I don't know who it was, but they felt the need to kind of push the issue there and put someone out of
Well,
business and close the
intellectual
doors.
property. But then at the same time, you need to understand in the U.S. patent law, if you find somebody infringe and you were told to infringe and you don't pursue immediately, you lose your IP. So at the same time, depends on my personal opinion is if anybody say that you infringe on whatever they do, there's enough patents out there. You don't have to use that unless you just refuse to use others or try to adopt. I mean, even on the name, just remember Prime. The inline is not cannot be used by them, so they just change the name.
Yeah.
There is ways to adapt, but at the same time, in the current industry, there's only so many boats being sold, and there's so many more companies. Right? Pearson's gone. Pearson's come back and forward. Jennings is gone forever. I mean, like Golden Eagle, all those are gone.
New Breed was a nice bow, and that they went out the door a few years ago, and that I still have a New Breed bow hanging in my.
The Clay is one of the best boat out there.
Yeah, that was my best. That's my best bow, and then like darn near shed a tear when they went out, and I'm like, oh man, and it happens. It happens. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, here's a quick list of some brands that are gone: Athens, Parker, Ross, Browning, Pearson, Proline, Strother, Anderson, Alpine, Jennings, Indiana Archery. Just to name a few. I was just researching some on Facebook.
Ross Archery was one of my best-selling bows. It was basic, affordable, but it served the purpose. They had the I think it was a Ross XT or something. It was only like a 3.5 pound bow, single cam, retailed for around $550, and I don't know. I sold like 15 of them or something in the 1 year, and they went out of business the next year. And I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me?"
Yeah.
I finally get a bow thing that I can keep in here. They didn't really change too much of the model. Almost just about every other manufacturer, they got to completely revamp a bow or something. And then they went out of business.
Yeah. Well, the consumer's attention spans have changed so dramatically that as a product company, you're forced to change your product year after year. You're just stale, and that's what happens. You go out of business. We feel that a lot here on the trail camera side. Like, if we're not bringing a new product to the market every year, it kind of just seems like there's a staleness to our brand.
I'm waiting for somebody hit George to come out with a bow. I ain't saying their names.
Well, actually, I always believe that a lot of manufacturers, PSC did a pretty good job. I mean, I don't know whether you remember that Matthew have the old brand, which is the Mission for the lower brand, and then the Hoy have the Reflex. No, you said the Hoy have a cheaper brand that they sell, the Reflex brand for the cheaper bows.
And then Diamond is Bowtex, right?
Correct. But see, in today's world, I really think that if we want to bring this is just my personal opinion. In today's world, if we want to bring archery to the masses, we need a good single cam bow. With today's best string, it'll be ideal hunting bow for anybody, and you don't screw around with everything. So now you can walk away with a bow under $700 with a sight and rest. You're done.
Like the Bear Adapt?
You're gonna shoot. The Bear Adapt is a good one, or the PS Laser that's based on the old PS. Or actually, the entire thing is a copy of the Matthews MQ32, but in PSC format with a twin limb. That's a good bow. That was a box bow for a while. I mean, you're talking wholesale is what, $375, retail for $525. You can't go wrong with that bow. That bow will kill every single animal in North America. It just doesn't look fancy.
Yeah.
But I don't think the deer you kill would care how fancy your bow look like. I mean, do you really need a $525 sight?
No, I have one now, Dorge. You're attacking me.
No, Jim, my friend Jim Moore just called me and said, Dorge, I bought this. It's supposed to be best in the world. It was slanted. You adjust it at an angle. I said, how much you pay for it? You know that more expensive than my first bow.
Yeah.
We got to do another show on if Dorge were to build a bow, what would it be?
He already has
Don't
the
push it.
drawings.
I know.
Well, don't push it. I got too much stuff on my plate. I got a few projects. I mean, just like you hint, I got an entire Africa 17 ranch venture coming through, and I have to work on my my IPM selling. I may be actually selling one of my old programs. Hopefully, I got 2-3 mil out of it. Let's see how it goes.
Wow. Well, I know where I'm coming for dinner if that happens.
I'll treat. No problem. I'll always treat when you guys showed up. You know that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for taking your time out of your day today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And until next time, we will talk to you soon.
All right. I'll catch you.